Shafts at dusk, confessions between floors. My name is Archer and I keep gravity from getting smug. I'm an elevator technician, ropes, rails, controllers, the quiet math that lets a box of strangers believe in up. On paper I run diagnostics, swap relays, grease guide shoes, and sign permits that make a building legal. In practice I'm a translator between impatience and steel. Tenants want arrival as birthright. Managers want uptime that never sends an invoice. Architects want silence to sound expensive. I carry a torque wrench that understands persuasion, a laminator with the authority of a small god, and a rag folded into eighths the way my father taught me when he said that oil can tell if you're lying. I live with Bennett. He teaches high school chemistry and has a talent for making electrons sound like a love story. He comes home smelling of chalk and safety goggles and reads quizzes aloud in a tone that forgives. We keep our rule on an index card magneted to the fridge under a souvenir token from a vintage lift in Lisbon. Say it by 4. 4 p.m. fits our shifts, truer than noon and ruder than midnight. We wrote it after a December when we learned that what you confess after 11 is a poem, and what you say before dinner is policy. The Tuesday the censors behaved and I didn't, the Prudence, a freshly rebranded tower with opinions about itself, was hosting a soft opening for brokers. I've been subcontracted to bring 5 cars online and babysit them while men in hard shoes said activation into highball glasses. At 3:56 my phone lit with the joint email Bennett and I use for deliveries, dentist reminders, and contrition. Thank you for your stay, the Oriole. Time, 12:073:02. Points 200 added. 4 sat down in my chest like a foreman. I didn't call him. Our second rule is for everything not yet a disaster. 2 loops around the service corridor before nomming it. I walked past the machine rooms and the line of panel keys in their little labeled hooks. A superintendent nodded at me like a confession he didn't have time to accept. A florist wheeled a cart of orchids that smelled like money rehearsing mercy. The building hummed the sentence elevators prefer. You already know. The developer's rep found me while I was coaxing a temperamental door operator into believing in closure. You Archer, he said, though my name was on my chest. The badge on his said Silas Verne and in smaller font, Engagement. He had a suit that treated concrete like a conversation partner and a mouth that got away with itself. He introduced himself to my tool bag before he introduced himself to me, which is a tell. The Prudence appreciates craftsmanship, he said, as if buildings could tip. Good, I said, because I appreciate invoices. I watched him watch me adjust a clutch spring and thought about how people who talk for a living are startled when somebody's hands become the point. At 5:13 we had a car hiccup, controller complaining about door time in a voice that wanted to be believed. I reset. Silas watched. You make the building polite, he said. Drink when you're off. My office owes you curiosity. Bennett texted a picture of 3 blue beakers and the caption, "Forgot to order pipettes, improvised, still alive." 4. I sent a thumbs up and the Oriole sat like a bad word in my pocket. The Oriole bar existed to forgive receipts. Silas asked what it feels like to be trusted by a cable. I told him trust wasn't the word, tolerance is. He laughed like he'd already hired the quote. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers where I track pulse without wanting to and asked here, without being impolite. I said now, because sometimes the lap belt clicks and you let it. The room smelled of citrus and the part of carpet designed for apology. He kissed like a man used to opening doors using tongues instead of keys. He pressed me against the glass, and the city pretended not to see. He was generous in places biography trains men to be. I counted every bolt in the curtain track anyway and put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been added to our terms before we met. After he lay on his back and said the kind of sentence that purchases mirrors. You'll forgive him, meaning Bennett, meaning the steady to which I've promised my yes. I'll speak by 4, I said. He smiled like a closing that came in on budget. Bennett was home when I got in, writing balance on a stack of worksheets like the universe required a label. At 4, he washed his hands, leaned his hip against the counter and listened to nouns. Hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't use Silas's name because names turn into keys. Do you love him? He asked, calm as a pipette. I love the part of me that stops listening for alarms, I said. He nodded, considered, then pulled the marker from the magnet. Under the rule, he wrote in tidy capitals, "No rooms we can't name at this table. If we break it together before dusk." He underlined together, recapped the marker like a man who knows about fumes, and kissed my temple. Silas believed hovering was a virtue. He appeared at the Prudence 3 days later with a donor tour and introduced me by first name to a man whose wristwatch had a more interesting biography than mine. Archer saves us from stairs, Silas said, and I imagined his spine when it finally met humility. He texted at odd hours photos of elevator buttons that had been polished into botany. He sent a shot of the Prudence's bronze directory with the caption "Arrival," and I blocked him, then unblocked him, then remembered adulthood is just the arithmetic of that choice. The city thinks everything improves with surveillance. A blogger posted a grainy still from the Orioles elevator of my shoulder, Silas's mouth, the caption, "Engagement at the Prudence goes vertical." Bennett didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it inside the cabinet where we keep coffee, and took it down at 4 to make space for a shopping list. This is how he chooses his rituals: function over theater, mercy over memory. Stories like ours like props. The Oriole called to say housekeeping had found a ring in a room tied to an email that loves me. Narrow gold, engraved S+A not mine. The clerk asked whether I wished to handle it. I said hold for owner, because dignity sometimes sounds like you don't open the door you could. Silas collected it an hour later and slid it on while looking at me the way people watch doors without committing to stepping through. Work tried to rescue me with honest difficulties. The Prudence's penthouse tenant decided the service elevator was a personal chariot. A brake coil heated up during a showing, whispering wildfire. I caught the smell, dropped the hatch, and killed the power with the mildness fear prefers. Silas sent a text. You smell smoke faster than donors smell tax write-offs. Bennett left a lemon square on the counter with a note that said, for telling the truth to a building. Then a small red light glowed in an unkind place. Security found a recorder, cheap, sticky, taped inside a car station by the inspect key switch. It had been collecting maintenance chatter, the driver jokes, the prayers, the instructions to slow your hands down. I pried it off with a flathead and my stomach learned new grammar. The contractor log showed a vendor no one liked to say aloud had been given access by engagement. The battery pack sticker belonged to a firm I'd heard of and planned never to need. I told Bennett at 4. He brewed coffee like procedure and asked the question he saves for when lab accidents don't deserve that name. Do you want the story you're in, or the life that happens if you leave it? I put my hands flat on the table and listened to the part of me that counts floors relax the tiniest amount. I want us, I said. He reached across and covered my wrist with his palm like a steadying plate. Silas called. He said the recorder wasn't his, that a contractor had misunderstood documentation again. That policy is a living document. He said the things careful men say when telling a careful lie or a careful truth that feels like a lie because you've left out the name of the person who benefits. The building's manager banned the vendor. Legal wrote a memo that sounded like an apology but was mostly a procedure. We stuck a decal inside every car next to the certificate that read, "Consent is not implied." Silas tried to stage a final act. He met me at the Oriole with the kind of smile men bring to a shoe store when they already know their size. He held up the ring between two fingers, S+A, and said, "Say my name." Cashin would have sounded better in the drama he wanted, but Silas is what he had. "No," I said. The elevator chimed to remind him of gravity, and he pocketed the ring like a sentence that didn't get to end itself. If you want the erotics notarized, I can tell you that there was a wall and a yes and hands where they belonged because we said so. There was the kind of heat that doesn't need metaphor, the lamp left on because daylight had been part of the contract all along. There was a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. We were precise. We were not careful. We were honest about what our bodies decided before our emails reached agreement. If you want the intrigue plated, I can offer the ring with arithmetic, the recorder with ambitions, the elevator camera with narrative tendencies, a building lobby where orchids practiced good behavior. If you want redemption, I can only offer maintenance, the slow, public work of keeping movement safe, the private work of keeping a kitchen safe for truth. Bennett and I did not become saints. We became bored on purpose. He pressed his wrists into my palms on our little apartment rug and asked here, in a voice that has never once meant harm. I said now, because I am a man who likes to schedule consent. He tightened a knot in my shoulders with the competence of someone who knows that spines are a form of argument. We left the lamp on and the window cracked, and the city forgave us for making a noise it didn't deem on brand. Work stayed work. At 2 in the morning, a car stalled between floors because the emergency stop had learned zeal. I arrived and talked it down like a dog. A kid in a hoodie looked at me like I had invented rescue, and I told him the truth. Cables do the pulling. We only mind the story they tell. The prudence learned its cues. The agents learned our emergency pitch. Silas sent one more photograph, a shaft lit clean to the counterweight with the caption, "Still arrival." I didn't reply. The Oriole stopped calling. The ring's other initial turned out to belong to a man named Carter, who sent a polite note to the front desk, thanking them for professionalism. It smelled like money and relief. At 4 p.m. in our kitchen, we reread the index card. Bennett added a line in steady teacher script, "If you burn something, do it where I can help find water." We didn't laminate it. Paper needs breath to remember. He set a beaker on the table with iced tea in it and a lemon slice that apologized on its own time. He asked me to show him my forearm, the nick from the break housing, and he kissed it like a proof. The prudence opened. The brokers clapped for open plan ideas that will cause future divorces. I stood on the roof for 5 minutes and listened to the city be plural. The cars cycled themselves through a test. The hoist motors hummed like a hymn. I thought of my father's rag folded into eighths, of the way oil tells the truth, of Bennett's hand on my wrist in our own small room. If you need a moral, elevators will not provide one. They are honest machines. They carry what they are given and stop when told. Men are worse at both. For a few hours at a time, I keep gravity obedient. I bring boxes of impatience to the floor where they insist they were always meant to be. I go home to a man who can make acid-base titrations feel like choreography, and we decide whether to leave the lamp on. We throw away printouts and keep grocery lists. We count only what we intend to keep. Sometimes, in a quiet shaft, I turn off my headlamp and feel the building breathe around me. In that darkness, I practice my one immodest talent. I know which doors are safe to open. I know which keys belong to which mistakes. I know how to step into a car that will stop where I asked it to. And at 4, when the magnet on the fridge tells me we live in the kind of home that counts daylight, I say the thing. We practice again. The city rises and lowers and lowers and rises. I keep listening for alarms. and on good days don't need to.